Is West Dakota Fox News at 9 with Molly Martinez and meteorologist Henry Blakes. Your first news of the night starts right now on West Dakota Fox News at 9.
Our top story tonight, that missing machine gun from Minot Air Force Base has been found. Good evening, I'm Molly Martinez. The weapon disappeared last month. According to a release from the base, the Air Force Office of Special Investigations obtained a federal search warrant and recovered the gun in an airman's off-base residence on Tuesday. No word on what will happen to that airman. All week, we have brought you the results of an exclusive poll conducted by West Dakota Fox and Mason-Dixon Polling. Tonight's question is North Dakota headed in the right direction? Looking at the data, 69% think we are, 18% say no, 13% haven't made up their minds. Among eastern North Dakota, 63% feel we are on the right track, 23% say we're on the wrong track, and 14% are not sure. In the west, 71% agree, 13% disagree, and 16% undecided. As far as party lines go, it's pretty even right now on track versus wrong track for Democratic voters, with 7% unsure. Republicans think quite differently. They say the state is heading in the right direction, 85% to just 3%. Finally, independents are leaning the same way as Republicans, with 70% of them saying we are on the right track. More than 600 likely voters in North Dakota were interviewed by phone for this poll. It was conducted just last week from June 13th through the 15th. There's a 4% margin of error. If you want to see these numbers again, as well as the numbers for U.S. Senate race and the U.S. House race, we've posted them on our website, yournewsleader.com. Well, after days of claiming it was beyond his control, today President Trump signed an executive order to end the practice of separating families at the southern U.S. border. The backtracking comes amid a national outcry. Jeff Zeleny reports.
We're signing an executive order.
President Trump doing tonight what he insisted he could not, stopping the policy of separating migrant families at the U.S. border.
Anybody with a heart would feel very strongly about it. We don't like to see families separated.
In the Oval Office, the president abruptly changing course, trying to contain an immigration crisis consuming his administration. He signed an executive order to detain parents and children together if they illegally cross the U.S. border.
We're going to have strong, very strong borders, but we're going to keep the families together. I didn't like the sight or the feeling of families being separated.
But for days, the president and his administration maintained their hands were tied. They said an act of Congress was needed to change a policy roundly criticized for its cruelness.
Can't do it through an executive order.
Until these loopholes are closed by Congress, it is not possible as a matter of law to detain and remove whole family units who arrive illegally in the United States.
It's Congress's job to change the law. We're calling on them to do exactly that.
But the White House caved to worldwide public pressure.
Mr. President, don't you have kids?
Finally swayed by a near revolt inside the Republican Party.
I'm going to try and see that it doesn't continue. We should never play with the lives of these children.
These images from the border and the sounds of wailing children became too much to overcome. And leverage to push a broader immigration bill faded in the controversy. Sitting at the Resolute desk today, the president even seemed to acknowledge that he was buckling to public pressure.
You're going to have a lot of happy people.
Yet for much of the day, confusion gripped Washington.
We are going to take action to keep families together while we enforce our immigration laws.
But Speaker Paul Ryan and other Republican leaders were caught off guard by the president's sudden change of heart. By afternoon, they were summoned to the White House. The president made clear it would not entirely erase the zero-tolerance policy of separating children and parents at the border, but rather detain migrant families together.
Meantime, North Dakota lawmakers are weighing in on today's rollback. Congressman Kevin Cramer saying, in part, I hope the administration will reconsider this request and instead expedite the construction of facilities located near the border to adequately house families which have crossed into the United States illegally. From Senator Heitkamp, quote, I appreciate that the president has acknowledged what virtually everyone said from the beginning, that this was a policy started by the administration, that they had the ability to reverse or fix it at any time. Well, we're learning that Senator John Hoeven is planning a trip to Russia. Hoeven's office says he and other senators want to gain a better understanding of the issues surrounding U.S. relations with Russia, more specifically U.S. national security interests and NATO allies in that region. Hoeven is a member of the Senate Defense Appropriations Committee. We asked Hoeven's office how the trip would be funded, and they said normally these types of trips are funded by the state and defense departments. Details are still being worked out. Well, let's work out our weather now with meteorologist Henry Blakes.
Yeah, we got some work to do, but at least the conditions were comfortable for today and what to expect for our first day of summer, which starts tomorrow later on.
All right, thanks, Henry. Following some breaking news, after weeks of turmoil, CHI St. Alexis in Bismarck says it's replacing its emergency room doctors with physicians from an organization called Health Source Effective, July 1st. It's unclear how many doctors will be replaced. Last week, doctors voted to resign from 3 medical committees, citing low morale and safety concerns. A Dickinson man was killed this morning along Highway 22 after a collision with a semi hauling grain. According to the Highway Patrol, the 59-year-old victim was in a pickup truck and tried to pass a car using the left lane. That's when he drove head-on into the semi. He was pronounced dead at the scene. The truck driver and passengers were treated at the hospital. A water boil advisory is in effect for Lincoln after the discovery of E. coli in the water. Mayor Gerald Wise says one home tested positive for E. coli during random monthly inspections on June 11th. Residents are asked to boil water before drinking it, but washing your hands and taking showers is safe.
It's an isolated situation, but it's a situation that we have to look at a whole. Is there any possible way that it can spread?
Wise says neighboring homes tested negative for the bacteria. The Army Corps of Engineers increased flows from the Garrison Dam to 52,000 cubic feet per second, and they say they're going to have to do it again. The Corps says there could be ponding in low-lying areas, and some people's sump pumps could kick in. If there's no heavy rainfall above Lake Sakakawea, the Corps could release even more water.
There is capacity in Lake Oahe, so the good news is that they can move the water through, and they do have room to put it into Lake Oahe, so that won't be a bottleneck at this point, and that's helpful to us in avoiding flooding.
Hoeven says he urged the Corps to keep the public informed. The Burleigh County Rescue and Recovery Team hit the water today for their first summer training on Harmon Lake. Reporter Daniela Hurtado was there.
This year, the new technology is a side scan sonar, and basically the towfish that they have here, let us show you, they put this next to the boat and slowly release it into the water and down to the floor of the lake. It has been nearly a month since they added the new equipment, and the water rescue team says it helps them stay current.
We can search large bodies of water fairly quickly.
Technology like this costs a pretty penny.
Some of the equipment we have is upwards of $30,000 to $50,000.
How's the bottom?
Grants offered through agencies like the North Dakota Department of Emergency Services cover the bulk of the cost. Rugstead says the new sonar covers more ground than the remotely operated underwater vehicle.
It really is a confidence thing. You have to know how to read your equipment and how to respond to what your equipment tells you.
ROV and dive team also made a splash, going with the flow and teaming up to find the dummies.
We hope to not have to use this stuff, but we want to be prepared if we need to.
Deputy Fleck tells me they hope to have more trainings like the one they did today some other time this summer, but he says the main goal is to have more agencies with water rescue teams like Morton and McLean County to jump on board so they can have an even bigger training. Reporting from Harmon Lake for West Dakota Fox News at 9, I'm Daniela Hurtado.
State lawmakers are off to an early start in creating a new policy for workplace harassment before the 2019 session begins. 2 policy drafts would set up a process for investigating harassment allegations. A member of the legislature found guilty could be removed from leadership positions or even expelled.
People don't sometimes realize their behavior is inappropriate. And so by training people and giving them examples, I think we can shape behavior before it becomes a more serious problem.
Any complaint would stay confidential until the investigation is completed or 75 days after the original complaint was filed. Around town, Bismarck is pitching in to help Governor Burgum's Main Street initiative. Maddie Gelseth shows us what that entails.
The Renaissance Zone program is a 5-year tax incentive program to lower property taxes in downtown Bismarck and surrounding properties. The goal of the Renaissance Zone program is to make downtown Bismarck more business friendly.
Makes downtown more alive, makes downtown a more desirable place to go for people.
Although the district closed, the business is still part of the program.
At this point, if a new buyer were to purchase this property, open up a new restaurant, they could continue that incentive for one more year.
The Renaissance Zone district starts from West Bowen Avenue and ends on West Avenue B. It also goes from east to west, from South Washington Street to North 19th Street.
And the idea is you're taking something that's less attractive and less value and rehabbing it into something that actually is not only a benefit to the property itself, but creates benefit to the whole area.
More than 100 businesses and surrounding properties in downtown Bismarck take part in this Renaissance Zone program. For more information on the Renaissance Zone program, you can go to bismarcknd.gov. For West Dakota Fox News at 9, I'm Eddie Joseph.
After the break, another huge leap towards bringing medical marijuana to Mandan. A massive fire ripped through an apartment complex early this morning. This is in Kansas. Firefighters quickly evacuated 16 adults, 6 children, and all of their pets from inside the building and closed the roads around the complex as they attacked the flames. Authorities say no one was hurt. Heavy rains dumping on parts of Montana, causing major flooding and road closures. Residents in the capital city say they were taken by surprise and that flooding is atypical of the area. Some more flooding to tell you about, this time on the Las Vegas Strip. A water main break at Mandalay Bay Hotel left guests ankle deep in water. Authorities ordered evacuations for some 2,000 people at the casino. The hotel says the flooding did not disrupt operations and no injuries were reported. On the health front, survivors of an opioid overdose may face a greater risk of death in the year following that overdose. Columbia University researchers analyzed Medicaid records from 45 states looking for causes of death in more than 75,000 adults treated for an opioid overdose. More than 5,000 died within the first year after an overdose, which is 24 times the death rate found in the general population. These deaths were frequently related to drug use, but survivors were also more likely to die from respiratory diseases, viral hepatitis, and suicides than the general population. Our neighbors to the north are now the second nation to legalize marijuana. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announcing today that Canada will be able to start using recreational marijuana on October 17th. Bill C-45, also known as the Cannabis Act, will allow Canadians to use the drug for recreational purposes. Medical use of the marijuana has been legal since 2001. Speaking of marijuana, Mandan is the latest city to set parameters for medical marijuana manufacturers and dispensaries. The City Commission introduced a new ordinance last night. It would allow medical marijuana businesses to be in commercial and some industrial areas, but they would have to be 1,000 feet from any school.
Ultimately, if there is any conflict, that we would just create that buffer, and so there'd be reduced conflict there between those uses.
The ordinance will have a second reading on July 10th. If approved, it could then go into effect. All right, let's send it over now to Henry for a full look at our forecast.
Hey, summer officially begins tomorrow.
The world's largest buffalo and Holstein cow are legendary and they're part of our landscape. Anyone who travels across North Dakota can't miss the massive monuments. Another of our state's Guinness Book of World Records achievement is virtually unknown because it's stored and preserved at one of the world's most famous museums. Cliff Naylor reports on perhaps the oddest item ever produced here.
Hans Nielsen Langseth farmed in the Red River Valley in the early 1900s. He grew something so amazing, it's now housed at the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History. The museum is dedicated to the wonders of the natural world. It contains more than 145 million artifacts, including the Hope Diamond and a 17-foot, 6-inch beard grown by Langseth.
We've been interested in human variation, and we're also interested in the cultural practices that people do.
David Hunt, the collections manager for physical anthropology, says the Smithsonian acquired Langseth's beard in 1967 and displayed it until 1991.
There were an awful lot of people who'd look at it and go, what the?
Back in 1865, Langseth began growing facial hair when he was 19 years old to compete in a beard competition in Iowa. By 1922, he became famous when his mane was named the world's longest beard.
He matted it, so it was really a little bit more like a big, long dreadlock.
After receiving national notoriety, Langseth traveled for a time with the circus and enjoyed playing practical jokes.
When the kids would come to visit, he would often, wait for them to not be paying attention, and then he would take it and he would throw it at them, and this thing would unfurl. So he had a good time with it.
Before he died, Langseth requested his beard be trimmed and preserved for posterity upon his death. His family granted that wish, and eventually his lifelong obsession was donated to the Smithsonian, where his facial hair lives on. For West Dakota Fox News at 9, I'm Cliff Naylor.
Postcards from guests on the Titanic are up for auction. The note was written by Sarah Daniels, who traveled first class on the liner. She wrote to a friend, "I wish you were here. This is a lovely boat, and it would do you good. I'm just going on deck." The card was postmarked April 11th, 1912, just days before the Titanic sank. Daniels survived the tragedy after getting onto a rescue boat shortly after the ship hit an iceberg. And if you have any postcards of your own, you can now slap a scratch and sniff stamp on it. The U.S. Postal Service is introducing the new line, which features favorite summer smells like kiwi, watermelon, orange, strawberry, and blueberry. The stamps will be coming out on June 20th. I think the recipient of that Titanic postcard was happy she was not there.
Oh yeah, most definitely. You don't want to be there, but you do want to be here tomorrow for the first day of summer. We'll be starting out our day near 60 degrees. The wind will remain light. That's the good news. Mostly southerly with highs near 80 degrees. Partly sunny and dry through Friday, but the weekend, as we've been mentioning, that's where the chances of storms come back into play.
Okay, well, me and Henry are going to work on our beards, and we will see you tomorrow.